Well, this is Joyce Peseroff, distinguished lecturer at UMass Boston, and an important part of our faculty here in the MFA program. And she'll be reading her poem, The Hardness Scale, for us, as well as talking a little bit about the poem, Tell All the Truth But Tell It Slant by Emily Dickinson. I always question whether or not we should say the first line or just the number that it's assigned sometimes.
Well, she didn't assign the poems the numbers, so
right.
I think the first line is a good way to do it.
Yeah. So why don't we begin in general and talk about what it is about poetry that gives you pleasure.
What I look for in a poem is first the sound. I want to be pleased orally. I want to have those sounds in my ear. And I want to read the poem out loud and enjoy the way it feels when I read it and get those words in my mouth and through my body. Then I look for any images that really grab me and that I can see a pattern and I can see a connection among them as I read the lines of the poem. And I like to be surprised. Everyone knows something nobody else knows, and usually each poem reveals what that thing is, and that's what I'm looking for. I want news. I want the news from poems. William Carlos Williams, the American modernist poet, once said, "If it ain't a pleasure, it ain't a poem." And that's ultimately what I look for. I look for the pleasures that a poem gives, the pleasures in sound, the pleasures in argument, the pleasures in imagery.
Right. So you would probably recommend to people who are just beginning to read poetry to sort of explore some of those sounds then?
I would always recommend that somebody read a poem out loud.
Right.
I think it's really important to do that. I do that in my classes and I do that myself. And listening for the sounds, listening for the rhythms of poems that sometimes coincide with the rhythms of your own body, your heartbeat, your breathing. You'll hear that in poems.
Right. Okay. Could you read for us your poem?
Yes, I'd love to.
The Hardness Scale.
The Hardness Scale. Diamonds are forever, so I gave you quartz, which is number 7 on the hardness scale. And it's hard enough to get to know anybody these days, if only to scratch the surface. And quartz will scratch 6 other mineral surfaces. It will scratch glass. It will scratch gold. It will even scratch your eyes out one morning. You can't be too careful. Diamonds are industrial, so I bought a ring of topaz, which is number 8 on the hardness scale. I wear it on my right hand, the way it was supposed to be, right? No tears and fewer regrets for reasons smooth and clear as glass. Topaz will scratch glass. It will scratch your quartz, all your radio crystals. You'll have to be silent the rest of your days, not to mention your nights, not to mention the night you ran away very drunk, very, very drunk, and you tried to cross the border but couldn't make it across the lake. Stirring up geysers with the oars, you drove the red canoe in circles, tried to pull it, but your left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. You fell asleep and let everyone know it when you woke up. In a gin-soaked morning, hair of the dog, you went hunting for geese, shot 3 lake trout in violation of the game laws, told me to clean them and that my eyes were bright as sapphires, which is number 9 on the hardness scale. A sapphire will cut a pearl. It will cut stainless steel. It will cut vinyl and mylar, and we'll probably cut a record this fall to be released on an obscure label known only to aficionados. I will buy a copy. I may buy you a copy, depending on how your tastes have changed. I will buy copies for my friends. We'll get a new needle, a diamond needle, which is number 10 on the hardness scale and will cut anything. It will cut wood and mortar, plaster and iron. It will cut the sapphires in my eyes, and I will bleed blind as 4 a.m. in the subways when even degenerates are dreaming. Blind as the time you shot up the room with a new hunting rifle, blind drunk as you were. You were number 11 on the hardness scale later that night, apologetic as you worked your way up slowly from the knees, and you worked your way down from the open-throated blouse. Diamonds are forever, so I give you softer things. I wrote that poem when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a senior. Long time
Really
ago.
incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, I love the fact that there are these sort of lines that are embedded in the poem that almost sound expected, or things that we have heard of. Because I was watching a James Bond film the
Right,
other night,
Diamonds
and
Are
Diamonds
Forever.
Are Forever. Immediately when I saw that, and then, but at the same time, the surprise is just in the personal spirit that is brought, I think, to the poem.
Well, I think poetry takes something that we know and makes it strange and wonderful.
Yes.
And often with language that maybe we've heard before, uses it maybe in a different way, ironically, or then takes it a little further in a direction that you don't expect it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what I remember from other poems that you have written is the use of scientific fact and bits of these factual pieces of knowledge that you embed in the poetry, and was wondering if you might talk a bit about the idea of the hardness scale sort of being, it's sort of set up like a framework.
Yes, it became an extended metaphor for the poem. And I think we bring everything we know to the table when we write. Mm-hmm. All of these little bits of knowledge that we have, this, whether it's esoteric or whether it's something you learned in 7th grade earth science class, which is where I learned about the hardness scale, it's all in there. And that first line led to the notion of, well, a diamond is at the top of this scale, so what else is on this scale, and how does that become a way of expressing what I wanted to express, or what I discovered I wanted to express in the poem. I think that poetry tries to bring in the world, and because the world is ever changing, it means poetry is always going to reinvent itself and be fresh. And science is one other discipline that's always reinventing itself.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I never thought of it that way. That's neat.
That might be an